Hi, my name is Josh Tuchko here at You.i TV. Today I wanted to talk about how our designer workflow can improve the relationship between developers and designers by allowing the developer to fully focus on feature implementation and functionality, but also letting the designer to have the exact UI that they dreamed about implemented in the application. So let's explore that here. I have After Effects open here, which is our designer tool that we use for basically making any designer's dream a reality. That includes animations, layout controls, basically everything. If you want a more in-depth kind of After Effects tutorial, you can check out some of our other posts as well. But today we're going to explore how myself as a developer can feel empowered to focus on feature and functionality and programming as I normally would, but give all of the power back to the designer's hands in terms of design implementation. As a developer, we don't want to have to tell a designer to compromise or to be the bearer of bad news and say, sorry, we can't implement that piece of user interface because it's too complicated and we're too hard on, or we're too pressed for time. But with this type of workflow, like I said, the designer can focus on design and get exactly what they want, and the developer can just code. So what we have here is, I've already basically made a new project. We just called this project Example App. It is completely empty. So let's just open that up first, just to kind of see where we're at as a baseline. So I'm going to generate this project for OS X. So we've generated it over here. I'm going to open it up just so we can see the Xcode project. The code in here right now is just default code, so I'll open that up so you can see. This is the starting app. There's nothing really much to it. We'll give it a little run again so we can kind of just have a baseline for today. Okay, here's the application running. This app is just a simple JSX app, just a template app just to kind of get you started, so nothing special to it, no After Effects whatsoever, but this will be our baseline. So let's go over to After Effects. So as a developer myself, I don't know a ton about After Effects. I'm not an expert by any means. I can get around and I can use our tool relatively effectively, but don't ask me to make anything pretty. But what's nice about what we're going to show here is that I can basically create a skeleton user interface, so something that's very ugly, developer art essentially, that is ready to be given code so that we can actually test our code, test our features and functionality, and then hand it off to the design team. So what I'm going to first do is make a composition. Compositions, essentially, you could think about it as a screen. So composition name, we're going to do a PDP today, so very simple. Width and height, since we're making a 10-foot application, it's just going to be 1920 by 1080, so that's fine. Press OK. We have a little screen here. You can just imagine this as a screen. We'll give this a little run. So within our tool, if you go to composition and go to preview current composition, it will export this information and basically run it inside of our engine. And it's a small, lightweight version of our engine. Obviously it's blank and it's all see-through. There's nothing here because we haven't done anything. We can change the background color to test. But let's start kind of implementing so we can get to some code. So the first thing I want to put in here, it is a PDP, so I'm going to need like a title, a description, an image, maybe a background image, that kind of stuff. So let's start building something out. Over here on the right side is our library. This is the You.i TV component library to kind of help you get started. I'm going to first put in an image just so we can kind of test that out. So again, I'm not a pro at this, but I can click some buttons. So click a button. What it's going to do is make a new component here on the left-hand side, and what we can do is drag that into our view, put it anywhere, and there we go. This is essentially a dynamic image that within our engine you can populate it with an image. So let's give that again a little test. Composition, preview current composition. You'll see here now we have a little gray square. I'll set a background color so we can kind of see what's going on, and I'm going to press P here to give it a random poster art. So you can see that right away we're giving it data, which is great. So essentially this is technically ready for code, which is great. As a developer, I can be like, okay, I'm going to download something from the back end, an image, and set it to this dynamic image, and away we go. Later on, as an example, the designer might come in and take this image and decide that it belongs over here, and maybe it's a little bit more, fat, I guess, this way. Again, we can test this preview. And all of a sudden we've, got an instant change, as you would expect. Same thing. Now we have a wide image. Of course, it's going to be stretched, but you can set different image sizing rules for that later on. So let's go back here. I'm just going to fix the size. So I kind of want to make a standard-ish PDP. I'm going to put it over here on the right. Maybe make it a little bigger. This will be our main kind of hero image, like our banner image, the one that you would, put like poster art into or whatever have you. So we'll just put that there. We're going to do another image as well. So I'm just going to bring in, actually, before we do that, let's name this one. So this image is I'm just going to call it image. This is going to be the main, like I said, the main poster art image. I want another one of those. So I'm just going to duplicate that layer, and I'm going to call this one background image. So the background image is going to obviously sit underneath our image. So you're going to have to move that layer down there. Pretty simple. Again, this is all developer art stuff, so I don't really care too much about it being perfect. I just want to be able to test my implementation. Okay, so that's behind there. I know it's a little bit hard to see the double gray, but you can trust me that the other gray is on top. Actually, let's do another test here. Preview current composition again, and I'll set the poster art. You can see now there's two images available, right? So we got our front image and our background image. And let's keep going. So I want to make let's do some metadata. So like, some content basically. So I'm going to go over here to my text tool. I'm going to, let's say, put in a title. So that'll be our first piece of content. So title will be there. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Of course, After Effects, for some reason, doesn't have the zoom at 75%. That's okay. All right, so we have our title there. Again, it's very ugly, but I only care about implementation at this point in time so that I can test. Let's do some more fields. We're gonna do year. We'll also do the runtime. Sorry about that one. We'll do runtime. We'll do rating. We'll do a whole bunch of stuff so we can actually get some decent metadata on here. Description. That's probably good, I would say. So we have title, year, runtime, rating, and description. As you can see here, all the layer names are also named that, which will be important when we start hooking up code, because we're going to be wanting to obviously find the title field, find the year field, and give it the correct data. Now we need some buttons, something like a play button or a like button. We'll take a look again here on our library on the right hand side, and what we want here is just a push button, a simple push button. So I'm going to say add that button, and you can see here we already have a button. What's nice about the engine and this button is it's already set up for touch and focus as a default. So you can see here we have a button, it's already able to be highlighted on. I can click it with my mouse, and I can actually also select it with my keyboard and click enter as if it was a remote control. So let's add a few more buttons. So I'm just going to duplicate that 2 more times. Whoops. So you can see here, now we have 3 buttons. We'll give that another test just to show you, how easy it is for focus to be automatically set up in the engine. So I'm already good to go for focus. All of these buttons work as touch buttons as well. I'm going to open up this secret developer panel just to show you a visual of that. So this is called the focus debugger tool. It'll show you where focus is expected to go. So on the right hand side at the bottom there, you can see basically everywhere that the focus navigation is expecting to go when navigating up, down, left, or right. But I didn't have to code any of that. We're still in After Effects, like we have done no code. So that's good. Let's leave that at that. But we're gonna have to name these buttons because we need to obviously distinguish between them. So we'll do, let's say, a play button. So that one will quote unquote play the content. We'll do a like button. Like button, and then we'll also do a watch list button. Great. So those will be mainly for, like I said, getting access to that button within code. So it has nothing to do really with what you see in here at the moment. the titles of these buttons are also dynamic. So while we do see the text here, they will be set within code when imported into the engine. So within the preview tool, it sets whatever information it sees, but in the engine, they'll actually be blank titles. That's pretty much it for now for the developer art. I mean, that's enough for us to hook up, a standard kind of PDP, right? We have our image, our main poster image, our background image, a title, year, runtime, rating, description. That's a decent amount of metadata, and then we've got a couple buttons. So we're pretty much ready to go. So we're going to save this project. We're going to save it. It needs to obviously be within our project. So let's go to example app. And then we have the After Effects folder here. So within UI and After Effects folder, we're going to save it in there. I'm just going to call it PDP. Save. And then I will export all of this information. So once you're done editing as a developer or designer, you just say export all compositions. And what this will do is dump all of the information out into the folder structure, and then it's ready to be consumed by the engine. So what we'll do here is we'll just double check that information actually came out. So within the UI folder, the After Effects folder, under assets, you can also see our PDP. We just saved that file. Assets, layout, and then under default, this is everything we just created. So you can see here we have the PDP, which is the main file, and you can actually see even in the layout file, you can see the things that we've placed, the background image, the title, all this stuff. This is all compressed JSON format in the binary file, but you also have the log file that you can read. So you can see description, watch list button, all the things we made. And then of course the base components that we created, we only created two. We created a push button and a dynamic image, but they're named differently and referenced within that file. So we're good to go. Let's move over to the application now. So over here, we have, of course, our Yarn server running for React Native. We've already done our generate for OS X, and we've already opened up the app, and this was our beginning sample app here. So let's go to code. We can delete all of this because we're not going to need it. Again, this is just the sample code. So let's kill all that. We might get some errors, maybe because there's nothing to render. Let's see what happens. Yeah, there's basically nothing to render. So what we're going to do is give it something to render, which will be our screen. So again, we've deleted all the JSX code and all of that view code, but since we're giving all of the power to the designer, the only thing we care about is loading that composition. So what we're going to do is go composition, which will import for us. We're going to import it here. So under the UI components, we're going to import composition. And then what we're going to do here is define the source, where it comes from. And so the source is going to be from a file called PDP, and then it's going to be selecting the composition PDP. And if you're just not sure as to kind of what I'm talking about, it's basically this file right here, right? So PDP underscore PDP layout. So that's exactly what we want to load. So once I save that, probably nothing's going to happen because we actually don't have the PDP. I'm going to rebuild the app here because I just made new assets. So it'll copy those brand new assets in, and boom, we have a user interface, right? So with basically no time whatsoever, I, as a developer, has created this really crappy interface that works with focus, works with touch, and also has fields that are ready to be populated. So let's start hooking up some data, because again, we just want to do our job here of being able to test some features and functionality. So back over here to code, we're going to start getting some code in. Of course, I've kind of done some of this coding already, so I'm going to just bring in some of the stuff that I have. We're going to populate the text field first. So how you do that is by something called text ref. For when you're dealing with After Effects within our engine, we're referencing something within the composition and referencing back to After Effects. So while in normal React Native or JSX, you would just say text, instead you say a text ref or image ref or button ref. Again, it being a reference to the composition and a reference to that design in After Effects. So what we're going to do is reference the first thing that we created, which was the title. So the name of that element here is called title. And then we're going to just set some text just to kind of see it change. So again, what are we referencing? Text ref with the expected layer name to be title, and then we're going to give it hello world, and then we'll save that. Go back over to the application. You can see it's already been reloaded because of React Native, and we have hello world there. Similarly, if I change this over, of course, to year and save that, then the year field will now be populated with hello world. Pretty straightforward. So let's bring in some JSON data. So what I'm going to do now is bring in a file here. So let's create a new file actually. We'll just call this one backend data, or call it metadata.json. And I got a little populated list of stuff here, so I'm gonna just paste that in. So this list of metadata, pretty simple. It's an array of movies. We have 3 elements within that array, or 3 objects, and we have the title, the year, the runtime rating, description, image, and background image for all of them. So pretty straightforward stuff. Simple JSON file. We'll bring that file and import it into our application here. So let's just do that. So we've created a import for that metadata and assigned it to a variable. And then what I want to do is just hook up all of the text information that we have from those files into our composition data. So I'll paste that there. So you can see here again, pretty simple. Let's just change this real quick because that's for later. I'm going to replace that with a 0, so the first element in the array. So again, we're referencing a text field within our composition. That name of that field is title, year, runtime, rating, and description. We're going to pull the information from our JSON file and then stick it in there. So if we save that, we'll go back over and you can see we already have some data in here. We're basically being able to build and not be blocked by design. And then in the meantime, design can also be doing their job to update this design, etc., and basically move forward at a very fast pace where we have this back and forth relationship between the designer and the developer. Very powerful stuff. All right, so what we're going to do now is just move to a little bit more code, some simple stuff. So what I want to do is basically just hook up a couple of the buttons here to a function that I called increment movie index. And that function just allows you to change between the movies while clicking on a button. So we should be able to test that right now. Of course, I don't have any state, so let's do that real quick. We'll bring in our little state component here. So the first index that we have is of course 0. This function will simply take the current index state, increment it up by 1 to a maximum of the length of the movies -1, and then all of the buttons link to that function. So we should be able to test that here. Of course, need to import button ref. Let's do that real quick. Under our imports, button ref. All right, here we go. You can see now that we also have text within these buttons and they're no longer blank. That is because when we implemented them here, again, button ref being a reference to a button in our composition, we found those buttons and we gave them a title. So title play, title like, title add to watch list. Now we should be able to test these buttons and click on them and see the data change. So we can change between all of these things. We don't have images, so that's the last thing to implement real quick. So again, we're just going to bring in, as you expect, image ref. So we're going to be referencing an image within our composition, referencing image and background image, and then we're going to be giving it the source of our data from the JSON file. So again, image and background image. So if we save that, of course, classic. We need our image ref. Real quick import image ref, save, and there we go. We have a very simple PDP with some images, background image, and essentially we're done. I mean, this is the initial implementation. The play button could go to the player, the like button could, obviously do a like within the backend or whatever you're building, but we're essentially done. This is good to go, ready to continue coding, ready to continue doing functionality from the developer side. But at this point in time now, we could say, hey designer, I'm done my initial skeleton implementation. I'm happy with the features based on, you know, what the story is or what the scope is. You know, you can go ahead and reskin it and do whatever design you need to do. So that's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to go and essentially talk to my designer, which I already have, but he has provided me a new PDP that will basically replace this within your GitHub or hopefully not SVN, but you know, usually GitHub. And then it will be able to be shown with the same content, the same backend information, the same features and functionality with no code changes from the developer. So what we're going to do now is open up our project here. I'm just going to go back up a level. Let's quickly close out this project from After Effects, right? I'm going to bring in the new PDP, which will be here. So this is the one that was already redone and reskinned by the designer. So I'll replace that file. And the designer has also brought in some assets. And you can see here under the drawable folder, we only have one asset, and this was to load that kind of default JSX example at the beginning. But instead, our designer has brought in, you know, a play button, a thumbs up button, and some other assets. So these would be normally imported by the designer and ready to go. So we're good to go there. Let's open up the PDP in After Effects, and we'll take a look at what it looks like. So you can see already very different. You know, it's been reskinned, rechanged. The image is now on the left. There's some kind of gradient. The buttons look a little bit better. Let's give that a quick preview just to kind of see what we're looking at. Oh, there's even an animation, right? So now the designer has gotten an animation for in and out implemented, something that, you know, we don't want to deal with because that's their vision. Allow them to, you know, achieve their vision and their functionality for the UI. The buttons are similar but different. You know, they have a real design now. And of course, the poster art is working correctly. Oh, and the background doesn't squish anymore or squash in a weird way because the image sizing property was correctly set. There we go. Look at that. So now we have the same data that we just were playing with earlier, but you know, the features and functionality hasn't changed, but the design completely has changed and now is updated by the designer. The designer can continue to make these improvements and these updates without really ever having to talk to developer, and they get their wishes and their dream. I'm just going to reload this here so you can see the in animation. So a nice animation that brings that sweeping background in. The content comes in from the left, the poster art comes in from the left. These are all things that a developer doesn't really need to deal with. And arguably the developer just needs to, you know, play it when it needs to happen. So when the screen comes in, play the in timeline, play the out timeline, you know, that kind of stuff. But everything else is good to go. We didn't have to do any extra code. We just saved and exported. So this is a very powerful way that we work here at UI with the designer tool. Again, this is to improve the kind of collaboration effort between developers and designers, allowing the devs to completely and wholly focus on coding and functionality, not pixel pushing, and letting the designers completely have the vision that they want and take that UI dream and make it become a full reality with animations and everything included. So that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ping us anywhere. Thanks for watching.